No one could last more than 10 days with her, the staff whispered about the infamous mansion in Beverly Hills. There, Veronica, a former model, and the billionaire's young wife ruled like an ice queen. A single glance was enough to make the servants tremble. A single shout could crush their pride. 9 maids had already fled, some in tears, others vanishing into the night. But that morning Maria knocked on the door. No makeup, no suitcase, only the blazing eyes of a single mother desperate to earn money for her son's insulin. Would Veronica crush her? Or would it be Maria who forced the entire house to bow down? The glass fell like a silent bomb. The sharp crack of its shatter rang out in the luxurious living room bathed in Beverly Hills light. Red wine splattered, soaking into the pristine white carpet, spreading in thick circles, glowing like blood. In that instant, the entire mansion seemed to hold its breath. Not because of the value of the glass, but because everyone knew this wasn't an accident. It was a test. Maria stood in the middle of the room, still holding a cleaning cloth, her eyes fixed on the red stain seeping outward as if fate itself were challenging her. The woman who had dropped the glass was Veronica, the new mistress of the house, a cold, proud rose, with the figure of a former model and eyes sharp enough to turn anyone's confidence to dust. She said nothing at first, only rotated her wrist slowly before uttering 2 clipped words, "Clean it." Her voice was like a thin blade, slicing through the heavy air. No one dared move. The elderly butler shook his head slightly, whispering like a prophecy, "She won't last either." It was the phrase they had used for every maid who had entered and then fled, either in tears or in the dead of night. But Maria did not cry. No sigh, no plea. She knelt down, carefully pressing the cloth to the spreading wine. Her sun-browned hands moved in small, steady circles, as though she had long been trained to erase stains that came without warning. A life as a single immigrant mother had forged that resilience. When the hospital had said her son needed more insulin and the money was gone, Maria had sold her old wedding shoes. When he collapsed from low blood sugar in the middle of the night, she had sprinted through blocks of rain-soaked streets to find medicine. After all that, what was a red stain on a Beverly Hills carpet? The air thickened. Staff exchanged furtive glances. They had seen other women break down crying, hands shaking, begging for forgiveness. But Maria simply kept her head bowed, lips pressed tight, her dark eyes glowing with unusual focus. Her small figure blended into the carpet, an image that drew every gaze in the room. Veronica sat down in the armchair, crossing her legs, sipping slowly from a fresh pour of wine in a crystal goblet, as if nothing had happened. Yet her icy blue eyes never left Maria, tracking each movement, each press of the cloth. This was not about cleaning a stain. It was a quiet duel. Which one would break first? And then, the unexpected. Maria gathered the shards of glass, unhurried, and placed them neatly on a silver tray, as though tending an altar rather than disposing of trash. There was a bitter humor in it. Even a broken piece of glass was treated with more dignity than she was. The patience in her gesture made a few staff stifle weary chuckles. Veronica shot them a glance, and the laughter died instantly. Deep inside, Maria thought of Diego, her young son, waiting at home with a neighbor, his face pale from low blood sugar. She inhaled deeply, breathing in the scent of wine and iron, branding the moment into her resolve. Each wiped circle was one step closer to his next vial of medicine. Nearly 10 minutes later, the last crimson trace faded beneath her calloused hands. The carpet gleamed white again, leaving only the faint smell of wine. Maria rose, folded the cloth neatly, and stepped back. No one applauded, but something inside each servant shifted. Veronica set her glass down, her expression unreadable. A faint smile brushed her lips, not clear whether mocking or the flicker of rare curiosity. Maria bowed slightly and retreated quietly from the room, as if nothing had happened. But everyone knew. A hidden battle had begun, and for the first time, the mistress had met someone not so easy to break. Was this silence Maria's strength? strong enough to keep her in the graveyard of maids, or merely the first step into a confrontation far more merciless? And before we continue with the story, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Oh, and leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We'd love to know. The rustle of a broom against marble echoed in the early morning air, still tinged with the chill of night dew. As the sun skimmed across the red-tiled roofs of Beverly Hills, Maria had already tied her hair back, fastened her worn apron, and begun her long day. Each pane of glass gleamed under her hand, each sheet was changed, each marble tile scrubbed until the chandelier's light reflected like diamonds. No sighs, no complaints. Where previous maids had crumbled after just days of enduring Veronica's venomous words, Maria stayed quietly steadfast. She didn't work only for wages. For her, every speck of dust wiped away, every stain scrubbed clean, was a silent vow to her little boy in their small apartment just miles away. Diego was only 8, but already familiar with needles and the flashing numbers on a glucose monitor. Some nights he woke suddenly, lips pale, his body drenched in cold sweat. Maria held him close, whispering prayers, steadying her trembling hands as she delivered his insulin. Each hospital bill rose like a wall, swallowing the little she managed to save. She had sold her wedding ring, her mother's silver earrings, even the beloved books from her school days, and still, the money barely scratched the surface. That was why, in this dazzling mansion, Maria wasn't just cleaning. She was turning despair into strength. Each stroke of her hand was an unspoken promise. My son, I am still here, and I will not give up. The other staff began to notice something different. The gardener whispered to the gatekeeper, "She doesn't flinch when she's shouted at." The dishwasher murmured, "She doesn't slam doors when she's insulted." They started to look at Maria with a mix of pity and respect. While everyone else shrank from Veronica's gaze, Maria stood quietly, calmly scrubbing, like a small candle that refused to go out. Sometimes, in the stillness of the kitchen, Maria even smiled to herself. A faint smile, weary yet tinged with humor. If they think I'll run like the others, they'll be disappointed. Somehow, that quiet endurance mixed with hidden pride began to change the atmosphere in the house. Not loudly, but undeniably. One afternoon, as Maria was changing the sheets in the guest room, Veronica entered, her heels striking the floor like drums. She glanced down, lips curling, ready to unleash a cutting remark. But instead of venom, all that came was a cold, dismissive snort. Maria bent lower, continuing her work, showing not a trace of fear. It was that silence, not defiance, not blind obedience, that began to unsettle Veronica. For Maria, silence was not weakness, it was dignity. A dignity forged in motherhood, in sleepless nights by a hospital bed, in countless moments of swallowing tears while forcing a smile for her son. She was no stranger to the edge of despair, so the cruel words in this mansion were nothing more than passing winds. In Maria's eyes, life had been stripped down to one equation: how to keep Diego alive one more day, then another. So she scrubbed floors with her heart. She washed tablecloths with the tears that never fell. And she smiled not to please anyone, but to keep herself from breaking. The entire household seemed to wait for the moment Maria would shatter, like the 9 before her. But day after day she remained, unyielding, like a statue carved from a rare stone called motherhood. But how much longer before Maria's silence not only unsettled Veronica, but began to truly threaten the icy throne of the mistress of this Beverly Hills mansion? All right then, my dear viewers, if you find this story gripping, type 1 in the comments or simply write, "I'm still here," to keep listening. The kitchen door creaked, its old hinges groaning like a whisper in the night. A dim golden light spread across the marble floor, revealing the small figure curled up on a high chair. Isabella, the billionaire, Richard's daughter, clutched a worn-out teddy bear, her wide eyes open in the dark. Her hollow stomach growled softly, like an invisible drummer beating a muted rhythm. Maria walked in, her tired steps still steady, carrying a glass to pour water. The moment she spotted Isabella, her heart tightened. The 10-year-old didn't look like the daughter of immense wealth, but like a shadow left behind. Her nightgown was wrinkled, hair unkempt, her dark eyes sunken. Without a word of reproach, Maria opened the fridge and pulled out a container of cold soup from dinner. The chill made her nose sting. She ladled some into a bowl and warmed it on the stove. Soon, the scent of vegetables and chicken filled the quiet kitchen. Isabella watched closely, her arms squeezing the teddy bear tighter, as if afraid the magic would vanish if she moved. Maria placed the steaming bowl in front of her, offering only a small nod. Slowly, Isabella set down her bear, lifted the spoon, and sipped in tiny mouthfuls. Her eyes shimmered brighter than the kitchen lamp above. For the first time, Maria saw a fragile smile flicker across her face, a smile that perhaps hadn't surfaced in years. In the days that followed, Maria began to notice more. When she scrubbed the hallway floors, Isabella peeked out of her room. When she folded sheets, faint footsteps padded near the door. Sometimes, their eyes met hesitant, yet filled with a hunger for safety. And so, a thread was spun between them, fragile as spider silk, but stronger than anyone could see. Isabella lived under Veronica's rigid rules. Dresses pressed flat without a wrinkle. A desk polished to a mirror's sheen, tears forbidden in front of adults. But no child can grow on discipline alone. A child needs an embrace. Instead, Isabella had silent dinners, endless cold hallways, and a stepmother who measured life by frowns and specks of dust. Maria left behind little traces of care as she worked. A neatly folded blanket by the teddy bear, a slice of apple waiting on the desk, a quiet smile when their eyes crossed. No explanations, but Isabella knew. Someone saw her. One afternoon, sunlight slanted through the tall windows as Maria cleaned the glass. A soft giggle floated through the room. Turning, she caught Isabella hiding behind a curtain, shoulders trembling. At first, Maria thought she was crying, but the curtain swayed, and the girl peeked out laughing, as though sharing a secret. Just seconds, then she dashed away. Yet Maria's heart glowed, as if Diego, her own son, had just called Mama for the very first time. And so, without promises, Maria became a quiet anchor. When Isabella's stomach ached, she left peppermint tea at the door. When she forgot her coat, Maria placed a warm scarf on the chair. Small gestures, but they began to melt the ice around the girl's heart. What no one in the house expected was that Veronica felt the shift too. She noticed her husband's daughter emerging from her room more often, no longer clinging to shadows. And each time, the girl's eyes sought Maria first. It was like a tiny needle piercing the icy armor Veronica wrapped herself in. Was that first smile only a fleeting spark? Or was it the first crack that would bring down the frozen wall between Veronica and Isabella? The crystal glass shattered against the floor, sharp fragments scattering like tiny blades. Veronica stood in the center of the living room, afternoon light streaming through the tall windows, making her silk gown shimmer brilliantly. But that beauty only sharpened the cruelty of the moment. She drew a breath, cast a glance at her husband as if she had just witnessed a grave crime, then pointed a finger. She's unbearably clumsy. Everyone held their breath. Maria stood still, no excuses, no defense. She bent down, gathering the shards with her calloused hands, laying them gently into a cloth, whispering softly, "I'll clean it, ma'am." Her voice was low and calm, like a lake after rain, without a ripple. But this was not the first time. Veronica seemed to take delight in inventing cruel trials for the new maid. One morning, she handed Maria an old uniform, at least 2 sizes too small. When Maria emerged in the ill-fitting garment, other staff tried to stifle their laughter, some turning away in shame. Yet Maria only tightened the apron strings around her waist and carried on, her thin shoulders steady. Another time, after the marble floor had been polished until the ceiling lights gleamed in its reflection, Veronica entered, tilted her head to inspect the glow, and said coldly, "Do it again." The shine isn't perfect. Maria didn't question it. She knelt once more, hands soaked, repeating every motion. For her, cleaning again was simply another turn of the wheel in a life already spun around storms. What Veronica could never understand was this. Maria had spent nights by Diego's hospital bed, counting the beeps of a heart monitor, waiting for each dose of insulin. After facing hours on the brink of losing her son, how could a shattered vase, a sharp rebuke, or a too-tight uniform ever break her? Maria's endurance wasn't weakness, it was a steel forged from motherhood, a strength Veronica had never known. And that silence, little by little, began to unsettle Veronica. She was used to maids fleeing in tears. Some rebelled, some begged, some vanished overnight. But Maria, she bowed her head, kept working, and the next day was there again ready. No complaints, no tears in front of anyone. One sweltering afternoon, when Veronica deliberately spilled red wine across a spotless white tablecloth, Maria arrived with her bucket, calmly scrubbing until every fiber was clean, moving as though it were nothing more than water. The cook, watching from a distance, whispered, "She won't break. She's different." Veronica started looking in mirrors more often, forcing a thin smile. Deep down, she knew her grip on the household was slipping, not because of open defiance, but because of something far more dangerous, unyielding patience. With each silent act of endurance, Maria seemed to strip away pieces of Veronica's invisible power. Staff eyes shifted from fear to hope. Even Isabella, her husband's daughter, was emerging from her room more often now, sometimes smiling when Maria passed by. For Veronica, this was no longer about a servant. It was a warning. The icy fortress she had built for years was cracking, drop by drop. If a woman could endure every humiliation without breaking, could the most powerful mistress in Beverly Hills truly hold her throne, or would that very silence become the weapon that brought her down? Rain pounded the Beverly Hills garden, heavy drops drumming against the windows as if trying to shatter the silence inside the mansion. Roses thrashed violently in the wind. And in the middle of the slick courtyard came a soft thud, a sound sharp enough to make the gardener freeze. Isabella, in a crumpled white dress, sat on the ground, her knee scraped and bleeding, clutching a soaked teddy bear. Veronica appeared first, her high heels untouched by mud. She glanced at the child, frowning more at the stains on the dress than the wound on her skin. "Clumsy," she said coldly, then turned away as if the rain would wash away the problem itself. Maria rushed from the kitchen, her clothes damp, face etched with worry. Without hesitation, she scooped Isabella into her arms, holding her tight as if she were the only child in the world. Rainwater streamed down Maria's hair, mingling with Isabella's quiet tears. No words of comfort were needed. The warmth of that embrace was enough to stop the girl from trembling. In the kitchen's golden glow, Maria set Isabella gently on a wooden chair and wiped away the mud with a soft towel. She rinsed the scrape with salt water, each motion slow but steady. The girl bit her lip, eyes red, but no sob escaped. Maria opened a cupboard, found the first aid kit, and placed a bandage on the knee. A small, simple act, but done with the patience only a mother could give. Maria rose, ready to leave, to give the child space. But then, a whisper floated through the air, so soft it could have been part of the rain outside. "Mom?" Maria froze. She thought she had misheard. But then Isabella lifted her head, eyes shining like a lake after a storm, and repeated, quieter but clear, "Thank you, Mom." The world seemed to still. In that moment, every scar Maria carried, the endless nights in hospitals, the unpaid bills, the times she begged doctors for more time for Diego, felt soothed. A child not of her blood had just called her by the holiest of names. What Maria didn't know was that just beyond the kitchen door, Veronica had been standing there. She heard every word, each one piercing her heart like a blade. Her crimson lips stiffened, her hand gripped the door frame, and in her eyes, once so accustomed to control, for the first time flickered something else, fear. Not fear of losing authority over the staff, but fear of losing the only child who could call her mother. That night, when the house lay in silence, the usual sharp footsteps were gone. Veronica sat alone in her bedroom, her silk gown replaced by a plain gray robe. In her hands was an old wedding photo with billionaire Richard, a picture she had long regarded as nothing more than decoration. This time she clutched it to her chest, tears streaming down a face stripped of powder and pretense. The once icy room now glowed with sorrow. In the tall mirror, she no longer saw the cold queen of the mansion, but a solitary woman who had let slip away what mattered most. Meanwhile, in the small staff quarters, Maria could not sleep. Isabella's mom still echoed in her ears. She told herself it was just a fleeting moment, but her heart whispered that everything had changed. When a child speaks the name of motherhood where you least expect it, it can save a heart or bring down an entire wall of ice. The question is, which path will Veronica choose? Are you still with me, dear viewers? Take a pause, maybe sip some water, then keep listening to this unfolding story. If you're finding it gripping, drop a 1 in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe. That morning, the Beverly Hills mansion felt different. No echo of high heels down the hallways, no sharp commands cascading from the marble staircase. Instead, a heavy silence blanketed the house, so much so that even the gardener tread more softly. After folding a tablecloth neatly, Maria suddenly heard a small but clear voice. "Maria, come upstairs." It was Veronica's voice, but it lacked its usual sharpness, now husky, fractured, as if from a sleepless night. Maria entered the master bedroom, where the early sunlight was trapped behind thick curtains. On the vanity, perfume bottles and powder compacts that were once perfectly aligned now lay askew. Veronica sat there, robe loosely tied, mascara smeared into dark streaks beneath her eyes. Her reflection in the mirror no longer resembled the Ice Queen who had once terrified the household, but a woman adrift, lost in her own disarray. Without meeting Maria's gaze, Veronica spoke, her voice trembling as though confessing to herself rather than to the person beside her. "They call me a trophy wife. Just a display piece. That I could never replace Isabella's mother. I thought if this house was flawless, if everyone feared me, at least I would be good enough. But the more I tried to control, the further she slipped away." A pause. Maria didn't answer immediately. She simply walked closer, sat down beside her, and gently placed her hand over Veronica's trembling one. A simple gesture, but more resounding than any words. Veronica flinched. Never before had she allowed anyone to touch her at her weakest. Yet this time, she didn't pull away. Her once rigid shoulders quivered, as though that quiet gesture had opened a crack in the armor of pride she wore so tightly. Maria sat with her, offering no advice, no judgment. Her calm presence shifted the air in the room, and in that rare moment, two women from different worlds found common ground: the fear of losing the ones they loved. Veronica sighed, her eyes sliding toward a photo on the table, Richard and his first wife. "I hate to admit it, but sometimes I even envy the dead. Isabella dreams of her every night, while all I see in her eyes is disappointment whenever I enter the room." Maria squeezed her hand gently, as if to remind her that even a cracked vessel can still hold water if placed carefully. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the steady tick of the clock. Then Veronica's voice came low, not a command but a question fragile as paper. How could a child call you mom after only a few weeks?" Maria looked at her, her eyes soft but unwavering. She didn't need to speak, the answer already lived in the way she carried herself. Patience, unconditional love, and a heart that never turned away from another's pain. Veronica turned aside, hiding eyes rimmed red. But in that instant, the icy walls around her began to crack, not from begging or confrontation, but from the quiet persistence of a woman she had once dismissed. For the first time in this opulent mansion, Veronica did not demand the room be cleared when she was vulnerable. And Maria, the maid once belittled, was the one to witness her frailty. When the walls of a powerful woman's heart begin to fracture, Can the light truly break through? And can Maria hold this fragile moment long enough to turn it into a true turning point? That evening's dinner was unlike any that had come before. Beneath the crystal chandelier, the long table draped in pure white no longer carried the cold air of rigid ceremony. Instead, the scent of baked bread lingered, and the clinking of silverware rose like the background music of a true family. No one said it aloud, but everyone felt it. The atmosphere inside the Beverly Hills mansion had changed. The change began with the smallest things. Veronica, who once criticized even the crease of a tablecloth, was now the one who personally took Isabella to her children's art class, waiting patiently outside the door for her daughter to finish her first painting. She arranged a meeting with a child psychologist, something she once dismissed as unnecessary. And when she learned of Diego's illness, she used her old modeling world connections to link Maria with a foundation supporting children with diabetes. In her eyes, for the first time, there was a clumsy kind of tenderness, but it was genuine. Maria had changed too. From a quiet maid, she had become Veronica's partner of sorts. She still cleaned, still prepared dinner, but more importantly, she had become the bridge helping Isabella step out of the shadows, helping Veronica step out from behind her icy facade. At that dinner, Richard Hale, the billionaire who rarely made it home on time, sat at the head of the table looking around. He saw his 10-year-old daughter giggling as Maria told a clumsy story about once burning the toast. He saw Veronica not frown, but laugh too, even teasing lightly as she placed more vegetables on Isabella's plate. The lightness in the room felt like a breeze sweeping through a house long accustomed to tension. And then, Veronica set down her wine glass, inhaled, and her voice carried across the sudden hush. Maria is not just our housekeeper. She is the reason this house feels like home again. The declaration stunned the staff. Some even clapped without meaning to. Richard nodded, his calm eyes filled with rare agreement. He looked at Maria and formally appointed her as house manager, the one to oversee the entire household. Maria was speechless. But before she could respond, Isabella ran to her, wrapping her arms around her waist and whispering loudly enough for everyone to hear, "You're my real guardian." In that instant, the mansion once infamous as the graveyard of maids rang with applause, laughter, and above all acceptance. In the days that followed, the picture became even clearer. Isabella no longer feared the lighted hallways. Instead, she ran playfully alongside Diego when he came to visit. Veronica, instead of issuing cold orders, began appearing in the kitchen, awkwardly stirring a pot of soup only to be gently teased by Maria. "Careful, or it'll be too salty." Even the mistress of the house laughed at that, shaking her head and admitting, "Not everyone can do what you do." The mansion, once echoing with angry heels on marble floors, now filled with new sounds. Children's laughter, the crackle of pastries pulled from the oven, the piano in the living room as Isabella relearned the pieces her late mother once played. The once cold walls now held warmth, no longer reflecting only distance but cradling new memories. Maria watched it all, her heart brimming. She had walked into this house only hoping to earn enough for her son's medicine. She never imagined that her patience and quiet love would transform this place once haunted by fear into a true home. But in a world of luxury where Beverly Hills lights never sleep, could this newfound peace truly last, or was another challenge waiting just beyond the iron gates? The mansion once called the graveyard of maids had changed. Amid crystal light and the smell of baked bread, there was laughter ringing out. A child once afraid of the dark now dared to run across the yard. A woman once hiding behind coldness now dared to shed real tears before her family. And above all, there was Maria, a single mother who not only kept her promise to her son, but turned a cold house into a home. But life rarely pauses at perfect moments. Beyond those proud iron gates, Beverly Hills remains a world of flashing cameras, whispers, and new challenges waiting in the shadows. Can this fragile peace withstand the weight of public scrutiny, the storms that have yet to knock at the door? Or has the journey of Maria, Veronica, and Isabella only just begun? The lesson here is simple yet profound. Family is not only built on blood, but on love that never gives up. Sometimes it is an outsider with patience and a genuine heart who becomes the very soul of a home. And for each of us, what truly matters is not power or perfection, but the courage to offer a warm embrace at the right moment. Dear friends, if this story has touched your heart, share it with your loved ones in the United States to help spread a message of healing and love without borders. Don't forget to leave a comment below. What do you think of this ending? Can Maria remain the silent guardian? Or is there another chapter more turbulent waiting ahead? Do you want us to continue with part 2 of this story? If so, hit like, subscribe, and let us know where you're watching from. Because sometimes you, the one listening, are also part of the journey of turning pain into strength and a house into a true home.